Well, one thing's for sure, Jennifer. John Sullivan is probably in some sick and demented way that a lot of people in America know his name tonight.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know. We're gonna watch this clip here shortly, but I don't understand this guy's like end game. I really don't. I don't
Yeah,
know what.
and so to give you a little background here, John Sullivan, we're going to dive into tonight who is John Sullivan. Max Blumenthal has done tremendous research on this that he released earlier today. And here in Seattle, working with activists in Salt Lake City, where John is from, Rebellion Baby, that's their handle on Twitter. They have done tremendous research on John Sullivan, and they have painted a very interesting picture. John was a central figure in a number of videos that were shot on the Capitol. He was also right there when Ashley Babbitt was shot. He was the individual that told the police officers, and in some ways, he is partially culpable in getting shot because he was the one telling them, you just need to leave or you're going to get hurt. Just walk away, right? He was in total road warrior mode. Just walk
Mhm.
away. Just walk away. And they just walked away. And surprise, surprise, 30 seconds later, Ashley Babbitt is dead on the floor.
Yeah, no, it's insane to me. First off, why are these people listening to him? Um, Second, I think we have the clip later from the parlor, and he's in quite a bit of that, isn't he?
Yeah, he
Um,
is. He's like all over the place.
and he's totally got contradicting things going on. Um, I mean, the whole entire thing when people that was stunning to me. Those clips were stunning to me. But yeah, this person is a very interesting character in a alarming way. So I'm glad that people are kind of digging in and trying to figure out what's going on in that head of his.
Exactly. And John Sullivan was arrested today in Utah on federal charges, on a litany of charges for his actions on January 6th. And he
Mhm.
will probably have other charges added with that. And that's the first clip we're going to roll.
Okay.
Yeah, Kelly and Bob, James Sullivan says he turned in tips about his brother to the FBI here in Salt Lake City. He says he believes that his brother was not only involved in the riot at the Capitol, but somehow in charge.
Also, want to support the Black community out here too in the best way that I can. That's my belief. I believe the Black Lives Matter. I mean, I'm not here to assert myself and my beliefs on other people. I just want to give people the footage, the video.
The FBI's office in Salt Lake City would not confirm they were investigating Sullivan or any Utahns.
I want to condemn, absolutely condemn the shameful and violence that we saw on January 6th at the U.S. Capitol.
We still love John, and that's something that he needs to know.
Yeah. So, in the interest of a brevity and interest of not trampling on their copyrights, we had to clip that down. My encouragement would be to go to Channel 13, Provo, Utah, find the story, watch the 2.5 minute video. I'll explain a little bit to you what ends up on the cutting room floor. James Sullivan is his brother of John Sullivan, and James is a Proud Boy. So you have James the Proud Boy and John the, we're not exactly sure what John is, but we're going to dive into that here in a minute. And James, a Proud Boy, is claiming that John essentially is the mastermind behind the entire Capitol Hill insurrection, of which there is like nothing to support that.
Yeah, no, this doesn't seem like the kind of person to me that has the capabilities to construct this kind of organized insurrection. He might have been there egging it on. He might have been there, filming for attention, whatever he was doing. But this whole thing is so bizarre because to me, he's kind of like trying to play devil's advocate in the worst kind of way, in ways that are not necessarily useful for anybody. And it's back to what is his end game? What
Yeah.
is he really trying to get at here?
Well, his end game right now is probably a jail cell.
Yeah.
But when you start connecting the dots, and we're not, again, getting like into Charlie of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, trying to figure out the mailroom, where he has this crazy chart in the back. This is actually a pretty straight line, but it does kind of end at a question mark at the end. But it's not a good question mark at the end. And so with that, John, nobody knew about him until July when he popped on this scene about creating what he said, bring your guns, and have this violent protest in Utah that ended up with him getting arrested. Now, after that happened, John would be doing interviews with people. We've got a little bit of this video clip here that's running right now on a tweet. And so he interviewed a person. And as you see in that tweet or maybe an Instagram, they're like, John just promoted this and, put things in writing that I didn't say. So in other words, in promoting this interview, they promoted it as something that this individual didn't say at all. And it was something portraying Black Lives Matter in a very negative light. And allegedly, John is a Black Lives Matter activist. Allegedly.
Again, like I said, this person is playing like devil's advocate in the very worst possible way. But why go to the lengths? I know very little about him, but does he identify? He doesn't necessarily, from my understanding, identify as BLM.
That's correct. And we have that in this clip where he's like, I'm supportive of Black people, but he really dances around this issue of Black Lives Matter, this movement of Black Lives Matter. And we got some more clips and evidence we're going to show where when you start to unpeel this onion, you start to go, well, wait a minute, what's actually going on here? John's bad behavior of outing activists, outing people, spurning people on to commit violence, but then disappearing when things happened, not being kind of the commander in his own making, resulted in John being canceled out of Salt Lake City and essentially kicked out by anybody associated with Black Lives Matter at any level. So he did what any other rational person would do after that. Oh, no, he didn't hang his head and say, okay, I've been kicked out. He went to Portland and stirred his special brand of trouble there in Portland and was canceled there. He then tried to go to Los Angeles and Seattle, but by this point, everybody was kind of on to the game that he was playing.
So is this potentially him having some kind of thing for, getting notoriety from protest porn? So he just goes and does the antagonizing to get people to do these things that he can put on film and then, promote to advance his own whatever agenda that is.
Well, that's one of the theories, right? Is he a clout chaser, essentially? Is he in this nihilistic view of the world? And he clearly has a nihilistic view of the world. Does he get something emotionally or monetarily out of being this agent provocateur that moves from both the left side and the right side?
Wow. There's so much problematic about that. It seems like maybe now some of this is catching up to him, although it doesn't sound like this is the first time he's been arrested. But some of again, we're going to show clips later of the parlor stuff where he's in the Capitol with these people and he's clearly playing both sides, both antagonizing and, trying to get people to rein back. This is such an interesting story.
It is. And then he set up this website for, essentially black bloc in a box, right? You can go to this website and you can buy black gear in a box, right? It's protest gear in a box. And the website didn't have any SSL certificate. And anybody who went to that website and bought stuff was doxxed. So again, it becomes this very interesting thing of he set this up. There's no security certificate on it. So anybody can see what the transactions are going. And anybody that was dumb enough to take this bait ended up being doxxed by sites like Antifa Watch.
Wow. That is... How do you expect, I just don't understand, how do you do something like that and engage in that kind of behavior and expect activist communities anywhere to accept you, because it's not like activist communities, especially in the Pacific Northwest or in the, what's considered the American West more broadly, are disconnected from each other or don't have networks of communication and exchange that they're going to go, hey, this person is engaging in these kind of behaviors. You need to look out, and people aren't going to listen. So, yeah.
So one of the things that Rebellion Baby discovered in their research is that he has multiple online personas and multiple Twitter accounts and multiple Instagram accounts. And surprise, surprise, all of these accounts interconnect into each other and like and follow and share each other. But when you start digging into some of his accounts, you all of a sudden discover, if you look at people he's following and stuff that he likes, there are things that he likes and follows that are deep on the far right wing, like, people that want to destroy the government, people that are in 3%ers and Proud Boys. And he's like right on and liking that stuff when you go down into his rabbit hole of his own making.
Okay, so he's essentially trying to play devil's advocate and look like he's supporting both the right and the left, but he's essentially far right.
Potentially. Now, when he was in the Capitol, Jennifer, he was filming and asserting that he was there as a citizen journalist. But guess what? He was being filmed. He was being followed by a documentarian crew that's making a documentary about John Sullivan. And in one of the comments that he makes in the rotunda, we're not going to play that clip, but one of the comments that he makes in the rotunda when they get in there is he basically tells the person filming them, and I guess this individual in some way is connected to CNN. I can't quite remember how at the moment, and I don't want to get it wrong. So I'm just going to say that individual is somehow connected to CNN, but they're not there. They were not there in the capacities as CNN reporter. They were there as a cam ops and basically was like, this is going to make you famous, right? This is his reaction in this moment, which just immediately kind of goes to, wow, dude, you kind of sound like a narcissist.
Yeah, just a little bit. Narcissistic sociopath. So yeah, that's particularly interesting because I'd been reading something about that last week, and this person is like, I believe it's a female, is super sympathetic to him. And it's a very kind of interesting, because I was reading, I was like, this is very, very strange, especially, from what I've heard about him. So I'm kind of interested to see how that documentary pans out, especially relative to some of the more in-depth research that's been done.
Well, what's interesting is Max Blumenthal uncovered some things today that he shared. And it turns out that on this documentary, there are some very deep backers. And one of the backers behind this is Thor Halvorssen. And guess what? Thor Halvorssen is a neoconservative operator in kind of the same vein as like a Project Veritas.
Oh, wow.
And he is one of the primary backers of this documentary.
You have to sit back, and I know it's very kind of tinfoil hatty and, rabbit hole-y sounding. You have to sit back and wonder how all of this is potentially interconnected and how deep it goes, and then feeds into what happened at the Capitol on January 6th.
Yeah, some people, the commenting, are saying that she's actually paid for his trip. And as we revealed in that a clip, and I'll play it again, there are some very deep-pocketed people, including Brian Fogel, who was won an Academy Award for the movie Icarus and also for the movie The Dissident, is also one of the backers, also connected with Thor, which again is this political neoconservative gotcha kind of filmmaker. It is really fascinating. But there's more connections here, because we have this dynamic of James and John. And guess what? James and John work together on some things when you start digging through on the socials, including James and John communicating leading up to January 6th. And it's just actually out there in the socials. So did James think that like someone wasn't going to spend a little bit of time diving into their Twitters and Instagrams and start connecting the dots? I mean, apparently he did.
Are these like the worst double agents ever? I'm curious. Like these, it's astounding to me. These people that think they're so clever and do all this stuff on social media think that people aren't also equally as clever, if not more so, and don't understand how research works and how easy that stuff is to find.
It really is stunning. And then we have this where John actually platformed the Proud Boys and was also seen with Thad Cisneros outside of the Washington, D.C. Hilton after the insurrection on January 6th. He was then questioned shortly thereafter, John, by the FBI and released about an hour later. So now the question has to be asked. How on earth could a alleged Antifa, BLM, destroy them all, burn it down to the ground activist be chilling at a restaurant with one of the senior people in the Proud Boys and walked away from that interaction without his face pounded in? I mean, I know what the answer is, but I'm just like, I'm asking it to the audience.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, it's like 2 and 2 makes 4. It's essentially that simple.
And then the last thing that we have here is his website, Insurgents USA, and we have this clip, and I may play it a second time. But when you look at that, and I'm going to go ahead and roll that just one more time. When you look at this image, which goes back to this Utah event that caused, which he has scheduled for January 23rd, doubt that's happening now. The one thing that jumps out, there's not a single mention of Black Lives Matter on the page or the event that's coming up on January 23rd.
Wow. Yeah, he's both bad at being a narcissist and B, really bad at doing like covert operations. So I'm guessing a job in the FBI or Navy SEALs or something along those lines is not in his future.
I think the conclusion that is really hard, I think you can conclude this. John is not for Black Lives Matter, does not represent Black Lives Matter. John certainly was not the mastermind of January 6th. Ali Alexander would have a very, very strong opinion in particular on who the mastermind of January 6th is. And if you look at John's personality, if John wanted to play that card, he'd be playing that card because that seems to be his personality.
Yeah, I think if he thought he could take full credit for staging that insurrection and planning it, he probably would. It's interesting to me, though, there are people actually coming out and wanting to take credit for that. Who wants to, actually be proud and assume responsibility for planning and organizing a potential traitorous, seditious overthrow of the U.S. government?
The one thing that's undeniable, regardless of John's politics or affiliations, because it appears, in essence, he has no affiliations and he has no politics. He was involved in an attempted overthrow in the U.S. government. That part is undeniable. He is, through his words and actions, a contributor to the death of domestic terrorist Ashley Babbitt. That also is undeniable. And by his actions, he is at least indirectly responsible for the death of at least 2 police officers. And if we count the 2 people that were arrested and killed themselves after the FBI arrested them, 6 domestic terrorists.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He is totally both complicit and culpable and needs to be held accountable for these actions, which is probably not how he thought this would pan out. And so I'm really curious to see how the documentary frames that.
If documentary ever sees the light of day, because that's the other question I think starts to pop up in all of this. The one thing that I will say, I certainly wouldn't trust anything that comes out of John Sullivan's mouth. I just say that objectively.
Yeah, yeah. He's proven himself time and time again, both, actions, words, and things that are still in print on social media, not to be a very trustworthy character.
If you want to read the entire Twitter thread, there's a 43 tweet thread. It's a long read. I recommend you get a Threadripper or a Thread reader. You can actually, there's websites. You can just drop the link in and it'll just aggregate it into a simple reader. Rebellion Baby is the Twitter handle. You can go check out that and you can read all of their research. You can also search for Max Blumenthal and you can look for the research that they've done. We've aggregated all of that information together. And we will be clipping this in this segment and offering it up as a story. And with that, I want to do a thank for our patrons and we'll go to our last story.
Okay.
Said, hey, we're gonna have to start moving people, and then a couple other people came in and we were like,
the police to be held accountable for their actions. We're not going without no justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace.
That's a small clip to our documentary, Can You Hear Us? It will be previewing to our subscribers on Patreon on January 25th. It'll become available publicly in February. If you want an early preview of Can You Hear Us that includes never seen before video and commentary and tells the story of what happened in Seattle from June 1 to July 4, you can become the patron. You go to Patreon, look for the Malcontent for as little as $5 a month. It helps us continue to bring independent media to you.